Hey, if you're watching this video about the best eSIM for international travel, I'm gonna make a few assumptions about you. One, you're looking to travel internationally. Two, you're smart because you already know that eSIMs exist. And a lot of people are still stuck in this travel connectivity nightmare where like they're getting on a plane, they're going to the local, SIM card kiosk in the airport, they're paying 10 times more than they need to just to get a physical SIM, and then they're like pulling out an earring and trying to get the SIM, trying to get the old SIM out of their phone, put the new SIM in, they drop the old SIM, it's a whole thing. Maybe you've experienced this, maybe you've paid ridiculous roaming fees like I have. Back in the day when I lived in China, I literally had like multi-$100 phone bills for like really short conversations with my family back home. But as you know, lucky us, we're past this. The past couple of years, eSIMs have really exploded in popularity, and they're now a great option for international travelers like you. That said, while there are a lot of options, and I've stress tested probably 4 or 5 of them at this point, not all of them are equally good. Some are better than others. This promise of global coverage, well, it's a promise made, but it's not necessarily a promise kept. Technically, a lot of these eSIMs work in 160, 170 countries globally. The reality is that oftentimes they just don't, or they might work only in a capital city, but the minute you get out into a rural area, coverage drops. In my time, sometimes stressful on the road, I figured out what actually mattered. You want an eSIM provider with solid partnerships with multiple local networks. If they're just reliant on one main network, one main telecom in a country, well, if that particular telecom doesn't have good coverage in the area that you're in, well, your eSIM's just not going to work there. You want high speeds, of course, and ideally you also want the ability to buy a regional SIM. So like when I was in Southeast Asia last year, and ideally for those of you planning to travel through multiple countries, you want an eSIM that's going to give you coverage. And ideally, you also want an eSIM that offers you regional coverage where you can just get a regional packet, say for Southeast Asia, and that's going to cover you for every country in Southeast Asia. So you don't have to buy piecemeal for Vietnam, for Laos, for Cambodia, etc. Which brings me to my current personal favorite eSIM, and that's going to be Saily. Saily is literally a download and go situation. It's super easy to set up. Setup took me about 6 minutes, maybe 7. And this is the first area I would give Saily an edge over some competitors. You don't actually really have to fiddle with your phone's configuration, with your phone's settings that much when setting up Saily. It has a very straightforward onboarding process, and it's just faster to set up than some competitors. I'd like to think I'm a pretty technically competent guy, but yeah, honestly, using some of these other eSIMs, I've just spent way too much time sitting in the phone configuration settings trying to configure a new eSIM, whereas with Saily just works basically out of the box. And that's what you want when you're traveling, right? You want an eSIM that is going to work the minute you land. That feeling of anxiety when you land, you go to connect to data and you don't have any. None of us want that. I don't want that. You don't want that, and Saily helps us prevent that. So I'll show you the interface on the screen here. As you see, very straightforward. Basically, with Saily, you can check your data usage, you can buy new plans, and you can manage multiple eSIMs all in one place. One thing I really appreciate about Saily is how it handles switching between multiple countries. So let's say you're on a European vacation. So if you're doing one of these classic Europe trips, you're probably going through like 6 countries in 10 days, and you don't want to mess around with settings every time you cross a land border. With Saily, if you purchase one of their regional packages, you don't have to worry about it. Anytime you cross a border, the app's going to update and you're going to have connectivity. Another area where I would say Saily really shines is just with its reliability. And yeah, like I said, I've really stress tested it. I've used it throughout Asia. I've used it in smaller towns in Portugal. I've used it in rural Mexico. I've occasionally hit roadblocks with Saily in like really rural Mexico, but that's to be expected with any telecom provider. So I'm not going to tell you that you're going to get like 100% always reliable coverage, but you're going to get 99.8% always reliable coverage, especially where it matters most: airports, hotels, city centers. So if you're like me, if you remember back in the day, you go to Tokyo and like sometimes hotels would have these like portable Wi-Fi hotspots, and you'd have to carry this thing around with you. I forget what they're called. They were useful at the time, but also kind of annoying. And it was just this weird Japanese thing where your Airbnb host or your hotel would give you your portable Wi-Fi. Well, those days are gone. You don't have to carry that thing around anymore. You got Saily. Cost-wise, here's what I can say. Saily is going to be cheaper than roaming charges. That's for sure. Even if you do have, say, a US-based phone plan and they offer you, some out-of-country coverage, Saily is probably going to be cheaper than that on a per gigabyte basis. With Saily, you could get a week of data for, I think, as low as $4. So for those of you looking for larger plans, I think you could get 20 gigs for like 18 bucks. And that's really a steal compared to competitor options. Another cool thing about Saily is you can just buy it, use it, and then that's it, right? Like compare Saily and this really easy to use app where you buy something for a 2-week trip to Italy with like your experience with your telecom provider back home, which if you're in the US, I guarantee you it's a headache, right? You might not even be able to remove the SIM from your phone. This is another thing that I really appreciate about Saily. It's easy to use, and when you don't need to use it, you don't use it. You don't have to pay anymore. You don't have to cancel a contract. You just don't re-up your subscription and you're good to go. In fact, I would say Saily is a product that will show you, will remind you just how crazy the rest of the telecom industry is. Like Saily's 10 years into the future, if you're dealing with Sprint, T-Mobile, whatever, you're kind of stuck in 2010. Price-wise, no brainer. Remember too, I've got discounts available in the video description below. So if you're about to travel internationally, definitely use those links, apply the discount, and save yourself some money. What makes Saily really flexible compared to other options is how they handle different types of trips. So if you're doing a quick weekend getaway, you can get a few gigs for a week. If you're spending a month abroad, there's going to be a plan that fits you. You're not stuck with this one-size-fits-all coverage, and you can customize Saily based on where you're going and how long you're going to be there for. Wherever in the world you're going, remember you get 190 countries of coverage, which I don't even know how many countries are in the world, like 202. So basically, wherever you're going, you're going to get coverage, and it's going to be good coverage with Saily. Prior to Saily, I was using Airlo. Airlo is a decent product, but one, more complicated to set up. Two, not as reliable as Saily. My guess is that Saily just has more better local partnerships and competing eSIM companies. Not sure, but at least from my personal experience, Saily has one, been easier to set up, and two, just given me better coverage where I've been traveling. And data interruptions when you're traveling, not fun. Like the last thing you want to do is, be in Cambodia trying to see an incredible temple, and you're like filling out a customer support ticket saying, hey, why is my data working? And not something you have to be doing on your holiday with Saily. Another thing that I think is worth mentioning is that Saily is owned and operated by the parent company of NordVPN. NordVPN makes a great VPN. I use it pretty much on a daily basis. Why does this matter? Who cares that Saily is owned by NordVPN? The reason for me as a consumer, I think it's important is, well, you've seen the NordVPN ads, they're everywhere. This company is making a ton of money and they have deep pockets. The reason that matters to me and to you is that a company like Saily, well, they're going to be around for a long time, and they're going to continue to invest in the product. They're going to make it better and better and better. It wouldn't surprise me, and in fact, I actually expect this to happen when I do an updated Saily review video in like 3 years. I think Saily is going to be the leading eSIM provider for all of the reasons that I mentioned. Easy setup, very strong coverage with really limited gaps, an extremely low price point, and coverage across 190 countries. So regardless of where in the world you're going, Saily is going to have your back. Be sure to check those discounts available in the video description below, and happy travels. Cheers.